give a little introduction to Dr. Jack Eichorst, former president of LBI Seattle. Use the mic. Put on the glasses so I can read. Dr. C. Jack Eichorst graduated from LBI Minneapolis as class president in 1954 and went on to Concordia College in Moorhead, Minnesota for his undergraduate degree before completing his seminary education at Lutheran Theological Seminary. He was ordained in 1972 and served 23 years as a pastor, was a college professor and administrator at Dana College, director of Ecumenical Institute of the Ecumenical Institute at St. John's University, and then president of LBI Seattle. In selecting from a long list of leadership positions, Pastor Eichorst is a founding board member of Minnesota Citizens Concerned for Life, a member of the ELCA Task Force on Abortion, co-founder of Catholic Lutheran Dialogue, served on the boards of Golden Valley Lutheran College and Youth Encounter, and was a delegate to the 7th Assembly of the Lutheran World Federation in Budapest, Hungary. Pastor Eichorst is currently retired and living on the family farmstead where he was born and raised near Washburn, North Dakota. I Googled in there the other night, and it looks like it's pretty close to the Missouri River and maybe the time zone between Mountain and Central Time. He's been married to his wife Judy for 54 years. They were married here at Calvary Lutheran Church. They have four grown children and 9 grandchildren. So why don't you welcome Pastor Jack Eichorst.
Yeah, it is. Yeah. Do you remember who it is? Yeah. Look at it. Didn't read it. Let me see what it looks like in there. I can't remember.
Thank you, Larry. Is this okay? Can you hear me? Either I should be flattered or flattened. Flattered that you think that these people, as they're about ready to go to sleep, I can still hold their attention. To be the last one on the agenda, or just you've got something in for me. You really didn't want me to speak to an awake and alive audience. No insult intended there. I am pleased to be with you. Judy and I both graduated from LBI Minneapolis in 1954. Now, you people who went to LBI in 1965 on the new campus, you really don't know what hardship is. Do any of you remember the old men's dormitory? Let me tell you, that was a fire trap. They didn't have a shower. We finally put a shower up downstairs. There was so much soot around. You never wanted to wear anything that was light where you'd pick it up. Now, the friendships were absolutely marvelous, but the building was absolutely terrible. Today you wouldn't have a prayer of a chance of using a building like that for a dormitory. So I'm still of the old school that suffered a lot. This is you. There's no use, Kibler is right. The contemporary history is something one dare not touch. And having been intimately involved in that, actually, not only to graduate from there, but to be 9 years on the Golden Valley Lutheran College board, then to be president of LBI Seattle, and then actually went back on the board after the school went out of existence and there was still a board, because there was a desire to see what might be salvaged out of this whole situation. And it was a privilege to function as a consultant to help bring about this Lutheran Bible Ministries. And that was Howard and I worked on that for quite a long time. One of the joys of that for me was to go down to Atlanta and to negotiate the relationship with Walk Through the Bible people, including its founder, Bruce Wilkinson. And that was a marvelous thing that has happened. I suppose, how many of you have ever gone through a Walk Through the Bible course? Did you find it worthwhile? It's still a good way to get an overview of the Old Testament and the New Testament. I haven't taught it for a long time, but when I was a pastor in St. Cloud in Jamestown, North Dakota, Kent Gothy. By the way, Judy, would you pass up here that magazine so I can show it to them? Occasionally, you know, a guy does some good in the world, and I had a marvelous contraman by the name of Kent Grothy. It's way in the bottom. Marvelous contraman by the name of Kent Grothy, and he was a spectacular teacher of this program, and came on our staff in Jamestown. So he and I both taught this, and we think that out of a congregation of 2,500, we taught it to we taught it to about 800 people, because we required it for all confirmands that they walk through the New Testament, walk through the Old Testament, and their parents had to go with them. And it was quite amazing to see what happened when parents got involved in confirmation. As a matter of fact, I will never forget one man. He sat in the front row, and I remember I usually had a group between 30 and 50. And I would teach it on consecutive evenings, and you had to have it for 2 evenings. He sat in the front row. I don't mean that you're doing the same thing, but they would sit like this. And boy, I tell you, he had on his face a look that said, "I dare you to teach me anything." And it's going to be a cold day, you know, word before I listen to anything. So I just picked him out, and his name was Larry, and I said, "Well, here's a prayer need, and I'm going to pray about it this evening when I'm teaching." And then every time we coffee break, I didn't care about talking to anybody else. I wanted to talk to Larry. Both nights. And you know, the second night, he was getting excited, and he started to get interested. Well, it wasn't, but I guess the next year. And Larry was on his way out deer hunting. And he had been a race car driver. And on the way out deer hunting, we had a sleet storm that night. About 8:39, he was killed instantly when his pickup went off the road and into the ditch. What I remember was when his sister called me. And she said, "I have to tell you something, Pastor. You may not know this, but Larry was converted as a result of studying walk through the Bible." So you know, now there are a lot of Lutherans who won't use this language of being converted. That's because it's so necessary in the church that you don't know who needs to be converted anymore. I mean, it is a very, very serious and big issue. But I tell you that story because it illustrates how the Word of God actually works. How the Spirit takes this Word and transforms lives. The first thing that I really wanted to talk about here is the importance of being Bible-centered and the optimism that was reflected in Samuel Miller and others in starting a Bible school. How many read the article in the Metro Lutheran? Do any of you get the article in the Metro Lutheran? Now, Michael Shearer, who wrote that, I know that his brother is a pastor 8 miles from where I presently live. They come from that old ALC that, you know, he spoke about, that would have nothing to do with Lutheran Bible Institute. I felt very sad about that. I've written an article 4 times over in my sleep, in thinking that that isn't a true picture at all of what the Lutheran Bible Institute was all about. It isn't a true picture about the scholarly dimension of Lutheran Bible Institute. I went to school 14 years beyond high school. Now my kids think that's crazy. They haven't decided yet whether I was just a slow learner or that I was just stupid for being willing to do that much. I'm going to say this not to boast about my accomplishments, but to say, you know, I went to Concordia College in Moorhead, Luther Seminary. At Luther Seminary, I was one of the few that had the privilege of being in a small class of 10 people who actually read the Church Fathers in Latin and Greek. And we would take somebody like Irenaeus and read them for a year. How many of you know pastors that have ever done that? You won't. This was a rare opportunity because of the unique professor. Then I studied in Germany, under some extraordinary Catholic and Lutheran scholars as a Fulbright scholar, then 4 years at Yale University. I'm only telling you that, and I'm going to say this, that when I have to pick out the 5 finest teachers that I ever had, Oletta Wald is going to be among those 5, and she might be in the 3 if I had to pick 3. And I have sat at the feet of some genius people. One of the ironies of it was that at LBI, I had a course from Dr. John Grundy, who spoke, I think, 17 languages. How many of here speak another language other than English? Which language?
Oh, biblical Hebrew, biblical Greek.
You speak Hebrew?
I mixed it.
Okay, yeah, okay, that's pretty good. But here, this guy spoke 17 languages, and we had as our main text the Christian Message in the Non-Christian World by Heinrich Kramer, a Dutch theologian. Extraordinary work in the history of missions. I had the same book for a course at seminary. Now I'm going to make a nasty statement. The difference between my LBI course and my seminary course is that my LBI teacher really understood the book. Do you get it? Yeah, you know, and so when I hear this kind of talk about the fact that, you know, this was not of a very high level or so on, I want to know which planet they are on. Because some of the extraordinarily good teaching that I had at Lutheran Bible Institute. And these were some extraordinary people. You know, the thing that was so amazing is that the Bible was taught in what I would call a transformational way. It was intended to be taught in such a way that it could be applied in your life. You could appropriate it, but through learning it, and it would make a difference as to how you saw the world and all of life itself. And that's what happened. I had no intention of being a pastor. As a matter of fact, I had a pastor that was my pastor in my high school years, and he was a real supporter of LBI. But he saw me one day when I was on my way down from high school to the local drugstore where they had an actual soda fountain. How many remember those good old soda fountains? And I would go down there for a cherry sundae every noon as a supplement to our hot lunches. And believe me, those hot lunches, you know, the things that these kids get now, they look like they're Cadillac meals. Well, at any rate, we were walking back up, and I ran into Pastor so-and-so. And I had just come back from Boys Nation and had won some fancy honors as a kid. And he stopped me to talk about that. And then he made this statement, "We've got plans for you." Now, how many of you would think, do you have any idea what he was thinking about? You think I didn't know what he was talking about? Plans that I would be a pastor. And I'll tell you what, I avoided him for 6 months. And I could find a crack on the sidewalk today where he met me. And I said to myself, the last thing I will ever be in my life is a pastor. Now, it's true that that's the last thing I'm ever going to be. But it was an amazing kind of experience. And so, thanks be to God for another young man. He and I had both been valedictorians of high school. He was a year ahead of me, and he went to LBI. How he got there, I'm not totally sure. But he came to talk to me about the Bible and about the Lord Jesus Christ. How many of you people have ever had people come up to you and really talk to you about Jesus? I mean, you just suppose you go to church on Sunday morning.